no matter how much they beg me to.
Mhm.
Let's see, I just need to make sure that the configuration is right. Okay, so I have to make sure I stay this way.
Okay, am I okay this way? Or
No,
do I
you-
need to look straight ahead?
No, you're okay.
Should I look at you or in the camera?
Okay, two simple rules. I will introduce you first. You
Uh-huh.
look at the camera for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and after I've done the short introduction, I'll turn to you and you just speak to me.
Okay.
And please speak as loud as you want because you're in America now. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to do that.
That's okay.
No, this is just for audio sound. I'm going to take my notes. What I've written today. Some notes and yes, this is. So I took some notes during the
Uh-oh.
notes. Yeah. Okay.
I may not believe anything I said, but
No.
we'll see.
No, you don't have to believe. You just have to. So what will happen? There will be two takes. The first take will only last for about 1 or 2 minutes. Just
Okay.
to just to get yourself warm up.
Okay.
And then the second take will be. The second take will be just a free flow
Okay.
of questions.
Okay. And how long is that usually for?
It depends on how long you want it to be. The more elaborate you want it, the better, I think.
Okay.
It's a talk show, you know.
Okay,
So-
well, I
so
don't, how long is the talk show for?
It
Since, I know it's online, but,
usually it's about half an hour to 1 hour.
oh, okay,
If it's 1 hour, it will be break into 2 parts.
right.
So it all depends on you, how much you want to talk about
Okay.
your work, and also how you want to elaborate some of the issues that you talk about.
Okay.
And they could be issues that you couldn't share much today. You want
Right.
to talk about
Okay.
it.
Sounds good.
So-
Okay.
So that's how it goes. Now, before we move on, I want to confirm some information
Mhm.
when I introduce you.
Okay.
Now, so do I pronounce and address you as Miss Sybil Baker?
That's correct.
And is this correct? Is this information correct?
Yeah, let's see, I think they got this from my website.
Is there anything you want me to update you?
I think, I just got a grant recently, but it was, it wouldn't probably mean anything to this audience. It was just, it's a local, like Chattanooga's trying to improve the arts. So
Okay.
they gave a bunch of artist grants, and most of them are visual artists, but I was the only one that got a literary grant to work
Oh.
on my new novel. So if you want to ask me at some point about my new novel,
Yeah.
it's a multimedia piece, so I can maybe talk about that a little bit.
Okay. And you're written about how many books you written?
3 books, and then I don't think it's on there, but I've obviously published a lot of short stories and essays.
Okay.
Essays about living abroad, and also I also write about Asian American literature, I guess.
No problem. That I should introduce. I have to introduce this book.
Yeah.
This is just released in this year, right?
May,
May.
correct.
Okay, Into This World in May. Okay. So Into This World. Yeah, that's right. In
So
May.
this was my first one.
Mhm.
And that one was in, let me do the math, I think that was in 2009.
Mhm.
And then Talisman, Talismans was December of 2010, so almost 2011.
So it's 20.
2010 or 11, doesn't matter.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
No problem. I'll make it short and sharp, and I'll just mention the titles, and then only the latest title, Into This World, will be mentioned with the year and year
Okay.
and date. You know.
Okay.
so just to save the complication,
Okay, that's fine.
just to make it simple, and I have a problem if trying to pronounce
Chattanooga.
Chattanooga. Okay.
Yeah, Chattanooga.
Okay.
Like the Chattanooga Choo Choo. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
The song.
Chattanooga.
It's Native American. That's why it used to be a big Native American spot.
Nooga.
Chattanooga.
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 Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, Chattanooga.
Perfect.
I used to, Tennessee. I used
Yeah.
to work in Nashville.
Chattanooga is 2 hours from Nashville. Between Atlanta, right in the middle between Atlanta and Nashville almost, or Knoxville. So it's right on the corner of,
Okay.
it's like East Tennessee.
Oh, okay. I never forget my experience.
The South is a different world, isn't it?
I learned a lot from Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah.
Good. I love it, but it's,
It's-
my two interests are Southern literature and Asian American, which seem very different, but that's my two types that I like. Asia and place, the South of the U.S. and Asia.
Hmm.
Those are my
Oh.
favorites. And they're very different, but.
It is very different and interesting.
But I think that they have some similarities.
Yes, in terms of culture.
Culture, like family, more conservative.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's a little bit
Very-
more like Asia, I
It's-
think.
Yeah, it's,
Very family oriented.
I would think that some parts of the United States is extremely conservative, and they still have their old computer and old cars, and
Yeah.
they still stick to, and they're not gonna
Yeah.
change it.
If they have a computer at all, yeah.
And some they don't, and
Yeah.
especially the Amish, and
I know, there's a big gap. Yeah.
that's okay. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, they're happy.
You know.
Yeah, sure.
At first, it was a culture shock for me.
Yeah.
Some time ago, it was a real culture shock, and then I was like, well, but it has helped me. It has helped me quite a fair bit. So it's one extreme to another.
Yeah.
Amazing cultures differ, and I discovered that if you live in a city, it's different because it's a different form of democracy. If you live in a city and if you're on your own and you're starting a new life, it's an urban democracy.
Yeah.
Not so much of a civil democracy. That's one thing I realized.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the way I look at it.
And the city, the rural and the country and the city are very different. I guess that's true in almost every country, though.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, Singapore's so small, but once you, like, if you go to Korea or Shanghai, versus the rural, it's completely different.
It is.
Same in the States.
Great. 1, 2, and 3. Hi, I'm Robert. Sorry. It happens all the time because I don't know. It's just maybe it's just a thing. 1, 2, and 3. Hi, and welcome to the National Critics' Choice. I'm Robin Stienberg. Welcome to our show, and we have Miss Sybil Baker, who is named one of today's strongest emerging talents in literary fiction and poetry, they say. And she has actually published 3 books.
That's right.
And the 3 books are The Talesman, The Life Plan, and also upcoming is now available into This World, which has just been released in May of 2012. And if you wonder how to get hold of this book, you can always log on Amazon. And okay, so that is just the warm-up. So one. So you ready for the take 2?
Sure.
I just had to get this moment because I'm trying to get into character because I realized that I think the best interview I've done was a rabbi.
Oh, really? Why is that?
I don't know. Maybe it was one of my first ones I did, and because I came well prepared, and also because I want to make sure that this well-known rabbi knew what I knew about him.
Yeah.
So yeah, his name is Rabbi Lazer Brody. He's actually American, but he left the United States and settled in Israel for the rest of his life. He does go to New York every now and then, but surprisingly, he becomes one of the most well-known, sought-after authors.
Interesting.
In the Jewish community in the world. His writings are amazing, and That's as far as I can say. You know, because when I meet him, it was something.
It was a great interview, huh?
Yep, it was great, and I think it will be just as great as you as well. It will be. It will be. Have faith in me.
I have faith.
Oh wow! Hi, welcome to the National Quiz Choice. I'm Robin Steinberg, and welcome to our show again, to the Stienberg Review. And today we have a special guest, and that's none other than Miss Sybil Baker, who's been named one of today's strongest emerging talents in the literary fiction and poetry by Anis Shirvani from the Huffington Post. Now, Sybil is one of the authors of 3 books of fiction. She's linked to a collection of The Talisman, which traces one woman's journey from Virginia to South Korea to Southeast Asia. And her debut novel, The Life Plan, has been called a screwball comedy for the 21st century. A witty and winding roam through one woman's discovery that life, love, and liberty don't always go according to plan. Now, her novel, which is the latest novel, Into This World, which is right here, right, I have right now, just been released in May of 2012. And I tell you, I'm not going to divulge any more secrets. I will leave it to her to tell it all. And she's here for the American Writers Festival here in Singapore this year in 2012. And she's going to give us more insight what literacy is all about. And you know, the state of literature, how is it going from here in ASEAN and also in the United States and throughout the world. Ms. Sybil, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
You know, I
Glad
think,
to be here.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that you've come to Singapore and you know to share with us.
From Chattanooga, Tennessee.
That's right, Chattanooga, Tennessee. You know, if you guys are wondering where it is, it's down in south, and it's not as bad as you think it is. You know, it's the south. But hey, if you know where the Music City is, it's Nashville, Tennessee. Hey,
It's not too far.
It's not too far, and you're not gonna miss it. And Chattanooga has a lot to offer, I can assure you. And Ms. Sybil, please tell us more about you know your experience, you know, in writing these books, and you know, and your insights on what you know literature means for the American audience and the public at large, and how has that changed today's world. And could you give us some comparison of the way Asia sees, you know, literature?
Okay. All right. Well, we'll start off with you were asking me about my books and how I started writing about them.
That's right.
And I lived in South Korea for 12 years. And during that time, I taught at several universities. For the most part, I taught at a university called Yonsei University. And I taught in the English department there. And I did get a lot of, I got the semester breaks off. So I traveled a lot during that time. And I traveled a lot around Asia and other places as well. But I really just fell in love with traveling. And so I moved back to the States in 2007. And that was when I really started writing. I got a job at a university teaching creative writing, and that was when I started getting serious about trying to get stuff published. So all 3 of my books take place primarily in Asia. And even though one is kind of funny, another one is darker, and I would say my more recent one is kind of in between. All of them, I guess I just felt drawn to write about Asia and from Americans going there. And I wanted to kind of comment on that and write about those experiences, because I feel that a lot of times Americans in general don't know a lot about Asia and what's going on. So I wanted to bring that world to them a little bit because I loved it so much. So my first novel, The Life Plan, takes place mostly in Thailand. And then my second novel, well, it's a novel and story, so it's what's called a linked short story collection. So it's short stories, but it's all about the same character. So it reads kind of like a novel. And those take place somewhat in Virginia in the States, but then the character goes to Korea, and then the stories take place in Thailand, in Cambodia, Vietnam, and Myanmar, or Burma. I think it's and South Korea. So, and then my latest novel takes place primarily in South Korea. So one of the things with literacy for me is, with the American audience is, as I said, I wanted to, I felt like there's plenty of people writing about suburbia in the States and upper white middle class affairs and problems, and I didn't think that I could do that any better than what's already out there. So I felt this is what I can bring to the conversation. So I really feel that literature, reading and writing literature is a conversation. And so we might read something, and as a writer say, oh, well, this was interesting, I'm going to write about this. Or Hemingway said this and Faulkner said that, I want to say this. And it doesn't mean that you think you're necessarily as important or as good as Hemingway or Faulkner, but it's still a conversation. And as readers, I think, too, we can read books and think of literature as a conversation. So going to your question about, I guess, literacy and literature, I think that it's very important, especially in this increasingly globalized world, to have that conversation. And it's important to, one, I think, know your own country's literature, because that's about identity and having some pride in your own writers. And even, in a place like Singapore, that that could be a very eclectic literature. Same in the States. We have Southern literature and Western, and we have African Americans. We have a lot of different parts of the conversation. But equally, I think it's important to also be aware or try to read literature from other countries as well, because it's so important, I think, in this global age that we know a little bit about the rest of the world.
Now, what inspired you to actually venture out to Asia? I mean, you wrote these wonderful books, but I think that many other readers and viewers would like to find out what inspired you.
Well, I moved to Korea in 1995, and I did not live in Seoul my first year. I was in another city called Daegu. And South Korea in 1995 is very different than the Korea today. In fact, you could say that about almost any country in Asia in particular. And it was very different when I was there in 1995, very different country. And but when I went, I just wanted to live abroad somewhere for a year. It wasn't Korea, it was just abroad. And at the time, and this is even pre-internet, so nowadays you can get online and find all these jobs for teaching abroad, but back then I would just have to open up the newspaper and there'd be an ad, come teach in Korea, we will pay your air flight. And so I was looking at Japan and South Korea and maybe another place, but I had not a lot, but I had a little bit of student loans, so I wanted to go somewhere I could pay those. And it just ended up, I knew nothing about Korea, but they offered what seemed like a good job, and so I was going to stay there for just 1 year and then come back. I had a good job when I left the States. This was in the 90s, so of course, things were going well. I lived in Washington, D.C., which is usually the economy is really good there. I was an editor for a firm that consulted to the government, and so there wasn't any reason that I left. I was happy, but I thought that's probably the time to go. And then 1 year turned into 12.
12 years?
Yes,
Wow.
12 years. I
Wow.
lived there until 2007.
Gosh.
Completely unplanned.
Huh.
But, and I might have still been there, except that I got this job kind of came up out of the blue back in the States. So I had kind of planned, I didn't have a big intention of moving back, actually.
Huh. Do you have any regrets moving back?
No, I don't, because I teach at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and it's turned out very well. That was when my publishing started taking off. I've had a chance to meet a lot of great writers. We run a writers conference there, and we bring in international writers. So that's been really good, and luckily I now am on faculty at the City University of Hong Kong. So I get to go back there. It's a low residency program, so I go back there once a year, and I get to come to I got to come to Singapore. I did go to Korea in 2010 to do research for this novel that just came out. So I try to come back when I can, because I do miss it. And I miss, it's just, you feel like Asia is where it's happening, and the U.S. and I can say this in frankness, and it's nothing to really cry about, but the U.S. is a country on its decline in many ways, and so when you come to Asia, you just feel that energy of things on the rise a lot more.
Do you miss the food here in Asia?
Oh yes, completely. I really miss, and like tonight we had this great, curry, and I love Korean food. So whenever I'm in Atlanta, they have a great Koreatown there, and I just go and go eat the food.
Have you tried the durian in Singapore?
Yes, I've tried the durian.
Oh,
I tried
did?
it in Thailand actually, because they have it in
yeah?
Thailand. I think. Yeah, it's good. I don't mind it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know people talk about the smell, but it's very creamy. It's
Yeah.
almost like ice cream, right?
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
it's not
Okay.
bad.
So everyone traveling abroad, from the United States, Korea, or wherever you are right now, please do taste the durian. It's amazing. There's no regret about it. And if you're staying at a Hyatt, hey, please don't stop or lie to my friends. The durian is great. So anyway, our program used to be sponsored by the Hyatt, and now we're fully independent.
Oh, okay.
And so right now, most of our viewers are happy with this new move because we're fully independent. So what they like to know is, how do you define literature? Because what is literature?
Yeah.
Literature, because literature seems to have its own life.
Right.
In every different country.
Right.
So could you give us some of your insights in comparison from the United States and here in Asia?
I think literature is alive. It's not something that's dead. So even if you're reading now, it doesn't mean it's not old. But even if you're reading Plato or Shakespeare or some of the Chinese ancient poets, it should still be a breathing, living thing. And I think that if as readers they're not catching that aliveness, then either they need, you need to be patient. But sometimes, you're not ready for something. I know that, when I was 18 years old, I wasn't ready to read Faulkner, for example, William Faulkner. He was way too his sentences were too long, and some people I know still don't like him, and that's fine, but they like other writers who I consider great writers. So there's so much great writing out there. I would say if you feel like, oh, well, I don't understand, I tried to read War and Peace and I don't like it so much, that's okay, try something else. And then maybe at another time in your life, then that will speak to you a bit more. Sometimes and so I think one of the problems is that people have a narrow definition of literature, and then because of that, they think that, well, I don't like literature, or I don't read literature, because they only have a narrow definition. And so obviously there's, I think, we can say there's some work that is, I guess you could say better or has more resonance maybe than other works do. But even that sometimes depends on the time period. So some writers, Melville, Moby Dick was not a success and then later did. And I think even Shakespeare was briefly out of fashion for a while. So sometimes certain writers will, we rediscover a certain writer and we think they're great and they were not during their time. Certainly there's, if you read South American literature, it has its flavor, and in some, Asian literature or Japanese, they all have their flavors to them, definitely. And I have I'm not trying to say that nothing is or nothing and everything are literature. I'm not trying to say that, because I do think that, but literature I think is something that has a lasting resonance. Hopefully for the reader. I know that's a broad definition, but
now what you mentioned about self-reflection, and the definition of literature, that has changed from time to time. You've been in Korea, as you mentioned, and you've been in Korea for 12 years, and at the same time in ASEAN as well. What sort of concepts of literature can students in Asia are able to adopt and learn from you, because you have written 3 books now.
Right.
You know, and they kind of like struggling to write or even pen it down.
Right.
So what would be your advice for them?
Well, for people that want to be writers, you know, it's the first advice, which is what almost people always hear, which is just read and write a lot and learn to read like a writer. So when you're reading a novel, see if you can pick apart and analyze it. You know, where are the turning points in the novel? What are the characters doing? Let me look at the sentences. And if you have a novel that you really like, you know, read it several times. And so the first time, read it for enjoyment, but then after that, you need to study it like you're looking under the engine, you know, the hood, under the, you guys call it the bonnet of the car. I was going to say the hood of the car, of the engine, and you want to see how all the parts are working. And so I think that that's very helpful. And of course, it's very helpful to have other people who are wanting to write. I think it's otherwise I think at least my experience in Korea, I can't speak, I don't know Singapore's situation, but I taught at you know, one of the high-ranked universities there, and I taught English, and the students, but I rarely ran into a student who said they wanted to be a writer, rarely. And they wanted to be professors. Or, you know, again, I think in Korea, your English skill is a very strong commodity, so if you can speak English really well, you can maybe get a job with an international company. Where in the States, I meet students all the time who want to be writers. There's more writers than there are readers. We have the opposite problem. Everyone wants to be a writer, but no one wants to sit down and read a book. So we have that problem there. So I have to say, okay, you want to be a writer? We need to start reading here first. So I think one of the things in Korea, or, you know, at least I say my experience in South Korea, is that if you want to be a writer, it can be very lonely, I think, in that culture. And so you really need to find some like-minded people who can be supportive and give you feedback, but also kind of keep you on that track.
Now, in the United States, you guys managed to actually engage and encourage people to read to some degree. And what is the success rate in doing so? Because reading in the United States has become more or less commercialized in that sense.
Yeah.
So, how can countries like Singapore, you know, and Malaysia and even Korea learn from the United States?
Well, I think it's a very complex question, because if you're looking at test scores, and Americans are wringing their hands over Americans can't read, we don't have a high literacy rate. Look at South Korea's test scores. They're, you know, 1, 2, 3 in the world, and you know, they have 99% literacy. Singapore is right up there as well as Hong Kong, and I think it's what Finland or so. You know, there's all these top, Japan. So America's way down there, and especially in math and science, of course, and that's another issue. But I think that, you know, the problem with you know, using the state's model for more for smaller countries is sometimes hard to do the transfer, because on the one hand, that's certainly true. We have literacy issues. We have such a disparate population as well. So there's some areas where the schools are really good and the students are doing very well. And then you have other places, poor and rural, so we have a bigger gap. But I think the other issue is, as far as the reading, we have so many graduate schools in the States. And we have a lot of MFA programs, Masters in Fine Arts and Creative Writing, where students can go away after they get their undergraduate degree for 2 years, sometimes 3, usually get a stipend. So they get paid to write fiction, to maybe teach a class at the university, and money to live off of for 2 or 3 years to write. So we have, and every year thousands of students get these MFAs. So one problem is we have a glut. We have too many people with MFAs, and they all want to be university teachers. There's just no jobs for them. And then two, they also want to write, and a lot of them do publish books, but a lot of them don't. It's just a numbers game. That said, in these MFA programs, what happens is we create readers. So we have underneath this level of people reading commercial fiction or not reading at all, because there's more distractions than there used to be. 100, 200 years ago, what did you do? You had no electricity. You would read the Bible by candlelight in the States. That was your entertainment. And then a little bit later, you would read books, and then it was listen to the radio, and then TV, and now there's just so many more distractions competing for the book. So I think that's a reality that's not going to go away. Just that the books had no competition, technology-wise, and now there's just so much more competition. But beneath that, with the subset, because we have such a large population, we still have the numbers-wise, we have a fairly large group of literate readers who love what's called literary fiction. And a lot of it's because we have all these people that went to MFA programs that are reading contemporary fiction and talking about it and writing about it, as from an analysis standpoint as well as a creative standpoint. And even after they get their MFA, even if they're not writing anymore, they still will look and see, oh, what's this new short story collection, or what's this? And they're not going to go for necessarily the bestseller commercial fiction. So because we have so many, percentage-wise, they're a small group, but numbers-wise, they're enough to kind of sustain the industry.
Ms. Sybil, about this new book, as we move forward into this role, and could you tell us what would be the most memorable part of the book that you found joy in writing? And is there any one character that you probably hate most, or love most, and why?
Okay, well, that's a really good question. I think, at least for me as a writer, it's very. I don't think it'd be possible to write about a character I hate. So now, ask me that another time. But so far, the characters now, I may not. They may have a lot of problems, but at least I feel some empathy for them. In this book is a story about a family, and it's about a father who, when he was very young, in his early 20s, was an enlisted GI, so he grew up in a poor town in Tennessee, and was in Korea in the late 1970s up to the Gwangju uprising, which I don't know if people in Singapore are familiar with that, but that was kind of Korea's Tiananmen Square incident, where they had an uprising and it was quelled, and that's really what began the democracy movement in Korea, although it happened 10 years later. So he was there during that time period when it was still pretty much a third world country, or getting out of that. And then it's his two daughters. One's an adopted Korean, and the two sisters go back to Korea in 2010. And so part of the novel is comparing Korea then and Korea now, because I think even a lot of younger Koreans don't know how much Korea has changed from that time period in all kinds of ways to the 2010 Korea. So that is not a character, but that was something I've just been fascinated by with the country. And so the father, I think, in the book is the one that I like the most, actually, because I have a friend who was a neighbor who was in Korea during that time, so I interviewed him